voice. It's getting there. Not quite there yet, but it's getting there. But I'm not feeling those ill effects of the cold. It just seems to have kind of stuck in my voice a little bit, tiny little bit of a cough left, but it's just there in my throat. It's not even sore. It's just as a catch. But I suppose I've been in coaching. I had a full day of coaching yesterday as well. So, I'm raising my voice. So that's not helping. But it's Christmas Eve now. I know you're listening to this on the 28th or maybe after that. So I'm going to get my few days off now, and I'm sure that'll help with the voice. I want to thank Rosa Walsh for coming on last week. She was absolutely fantastic. Great to talk to someone who's such a high level in jiu-jitsu and who's such a high level competitor and a person who's gone professional with the sport and moved from Ireland here to over to Illinois and obviously a new country, new gym, everything sounds just like a daunting thing and a brave thing to do. So I'll be keeping a close eye on Rosa. Hopefully she goes on to do what she wanted to do, eventually winning the worlds as a black belt. Fingers crossed for that. Thank you very much for our support over on Buy Me a Coffee. I want to thank Tina for that and for joining us as a supporter as well. It helps us all, and myself and John. And like I always say, the next step is to get a really good camera and do a bit of traveling to guests and make it kind of more personal rather than doing it over Zoom. Zoom has been great and all that, but I'd love to do a few more in-person interviews. So this week, decided to do a questions episode, and you were all very kind, sorted me out with some questions. I was worried for a couple of days that the questions wouldn't come in, but they all kind of flew in kind of on the same day, and saving my my skin a little bit. I actually got a couple of questions that I've been asked before, but I've been able to kind of turn them around a little bit and answer them in a different way because we change over time. I've been doing this podcast almost 3 years now, so I've changed, and that's just how it goes. So I'm gonna start first of all because it's a Beatles question. It's from my friend John Lyons, who was on here a number of weeks ago. Fantastic author, and obviously Beatles fan. So he asked me a couple of questions about the Beatles, and I'm always going to answer questions about the Beatles. Like, even if people are thinking, God, not the Beatles again. Yes, the Beatles again. This is who I am. But so John asked me questions I hadn't been asked about the Beatles before. I'd been asked about their albums and stuff when they're together, but he actually asked me to rank them as solo artists once the Beatles um, split up. So it's a great question, obviously. I think it's only fair to maybe do it from 1970 to 1980 because the sad passing of John Lennon, we didn't kind of see where he would have gone, and obviously Paul McCartney in particular went on to make some brilliant albums through the 90s and 2000s and still amazingly still making albums, really good albums. So I'm going to rank them from the 80s, and sadly, everybody knows my love for Ringo Starr. But sadly, Ringo's going to have to go bottom of the list. I will talk a bit, but there is another Beatles question after this, so I will get to give him some praise, but he will have to go bottom of the list. So I have to say apologies to Mr. Starr. Second and third was probably the toughest to flip between the two. And I think, George Harrison, early George Harrison, from 70 to 74, 75, he released some really brilliant stuff because he had been saving it up. Basically, he'd be getting, two songs an album with the Beatles. So he had saved up some amazing material. And second would be, for me, God, that's actually, I thought I had this sorted in my head, and now I'm kind of backtracking on it. I'm going to have to go with second being John Lennon, and again for the reasons that Lennon went as far as 75 and basically semi-retired from the music business before coming back in the late 80s, late 70s and 1980. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have to go George third, but it's by a hair that Lennon gets second. by a hair. And I'm going to explain that in the next answer, why that happened. And McCartney has to go number one. McCartney's 70s output is outrageous, really. Like, um, from doing his own early on, his first solo album, McCartney, where he recorded everything on his own, and played and sang obviously everything. His work with Linda, his work with Wings, and then coming into like even the late 70s, he did a song called "Coming Up With," which is a brilliant song, but which is also the song that got Lennon out of his semi-retirement, because he thought it was great and he thought he should have recorded it, and came back and did his own. So I'm going to go from the top: McCartney number one, excuse me, Lennon number two, Harrison number three, and Ringo number four. Now the next part of the question, excuse me, the next part of the question is favorite solo album. So this is where it kind of gets shuffled, and this is where I was kind of finding it difficult with them as 1, 2, 3, 4 as artists, solo artists. Number four. Okay, let me see. Yeah. Okay, number four, I'm gonna go with Ram by Paul McCartney. A great collection of songs. Um, Just Shades, Band on the Run by a hair. Again, that's probably more times I've used the phrase "by a hair" than I've ever done in my life. But yeah, Ram just beat the Band on the Run, which may pop up in a minute again. Number three, I will go with Imagine by John Lennon. There's a film called Imagine about the making of that album, which is one of my favorite documentaries. Being obviously a big Lennon fan, I love the documentary. There's another documentary called Above Us Only Sky as well, which is concentrates about on that. Number two, I'm going to go with All Things Must Pass by George Harrison. Double album, just his first solo album. All of those songs he'd saved up, some absolutely brilliant songs that I always kind of think, and it's not really right to think of it in a way of, oh, how good would that have been as a Beatles song, because it would have been completely different. So George's input on that is enough alone to make it a great album. Even Phil Spector, his production on that is as overbearing as Phil Spector can be. It actually suits the album quite well. And number one of my favorite albums of all time, really, is the Plastic Ono Band by John Lennon. Just John Lennon had been going through some therapy, some primal scream therapy, with Dr. Yanov. It was the guy who came up with the primal scream therapy, and you could hear it in John Lennon's vocal delivery at the end of Mother, in particular, where he basically screaming primally. And just that whole album, it's just like, it's so raw, stripped back. Lennon with his very raw vocals, his lyrics are very honest. It's a very autobiographical album, really. And I just think it's, I don't know, coming from such a huge Beatles fan, to listen to that probably after I'd listened to all the Beatles albums, that album kind of blew me away. So that's number one. And then the kind of toughest question is favorite song, and I'm going to do this again by Beatle. Photograph by Ringo Starr. If you haven't heard that song, it's such a beautiful song, and Ringo's voice, limited as it is just so perfectly suited to that tune. That's number four. I've already mentioned Coming Up by Paul McCartney. It's high up, but it would be remiss of me not to mention Band on the Run, by Paul McCartney and Wings. Three songs in one. Every piece is great, and like McCartney had some, like the backseat of my car is another one I would have had in there. Another Day. I mean, you could list loads of Paul McCartney songs from the 70s, but I'm just going to go with that. I'm going to go number two. The obvious one would be Imagine, but it's one of those ones that unfortunately suffers a little bit from overexposure, and you find that you tend to maybe go towards something else. Um, so for Lennon, I'm going to go for. Oh, I had this in my head, and now I'm kind of changing my mind a little bit. Yeah, it has to be Instant Karma. An amazing song that was written and recorded and released in like 48 hours or 72 hours or something outrageous like that. Just brilliance. Listen to watch the music video where Yoko's doing a bit of blind knitting in the middle of the performance. But it's such a great song. Lennon's vocal delivery is one of his best, I think. Um, Probably his most unrestrained vocal, I would think, where he's just maybe a bit more confident in how he's singing. And I have to go with number one, All Things Must Pass. It's in my top 10 songs of all time. Beautiful song. Um, George's spirituality is all through the lyrics, but there's just little things you could take as quotes from those songs, from those lyrics. And the music's beautiful. The orchestral part is just perfectly suited to it. John, I hope that answers your question. I hope you send John, if you would send on your favorites to me, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you want to. That would be very nice. I wanted to answer a question from someone who sent this to me. I'm not going to say their name because it doesn't really matter because it's a very relevant question about picking the correct person for therapy as picking the correct person as a therapist and being finding that you click with them and things like that. And I think I was thinking about this as like giving a person or a therapist like a couple of sessions, but if you're going private, that's not as easy as it sounds because you're having to pay the money. Um, so I think it's good to go on good instinct with a person. I've seen a person once where I thought, well, that this person's not for me, just their approach, nothing to do with the person themselves. Um, so good instinct is a big thing. If you're kind of coming out there going humming, kind of humming and hawing, is that the correct expression? I believe it is. I'm not quite sure, but then maybe it's okay to give them, a second chance to see how you get on. I can kind of use my last experience with um with Kenneth, who I spoke about on this podcast a few weeks ago, where it was straight away I was in there with Kenneth, and I kind of knew, oh, this lad is someone I'm going to go back to, and I think I'm going to be able to strike up some sort of rapport with them and be comfortable in how I interact. I think the thing about Kenneth, and you might find this with other therapists, he's very open about his own experiences with mental health. If you think that someone's been through it themselves, I think it's easier to relate to them. It's easier to open up with them. Um, rather than the clinical approach, for me, it was Kenneth's kind of honesty and openness that immediately made me want to go back and feel really comfortable and know that, oh, this is the kind of space and this is the person I want to kind of share the stuff and I trust them. And he'd come back with little analogies that would suit what I was trying to say. And, he'd obviously has plenty of experience as a therapist, but in life he had experience. I would say to the person who asked this question, if you immediately don't see that, if you don't feel it, then it's not for you. And it's never, I think the way the therapists are built or the way the therapists are, trained, they're not taking offense to the fact that you're not going back. So I think Irish people can be a little bit, oh God, what if they think I think they're, not good or whatever. I don't think it is a case of that with therapists, honestly. I think they know that they'll have to look at it from this side too, that if we don't feel the connection with the person, then, it's time to, to kind of drop it. And my experience with psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists have been all completely different. And I'm still not sure if I understand, even having read up on all of this, the difference between them. But I do think that a psychologist for me was someone who was assigned to me um, after I had the breakdown. And this was when I was in the care of the hospital, where I'd go every week and see the psychologist. It was different. And I think it seemed different to me than I felt with going to Kenneth because it felt more, that clinical, kind of approach because I was in a hospital rather than going to a therapist. And that's not a scientific answer to what you were asking. But it is, look, we can read up about the difference between psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists. So, but what I could feel in the difference was, look, I was going private with Kenneth. Um, and the layout of the office and things like that is a lot different than obviously being in a hospital. They try to make it as comfortable as you wanted in a hospital, but I could never kind of rid myself of that. And I didn't have a good experience when I changed to Roscommon. And again, not really because of the therapist, but just the situation of the constant chopping and changing. If you go through the public system, you might have a different therapist each week, and that's not conducive, I don't think, to proper therapy and to you know having being trustful of the person you're with and you're talking to. So for me, when I went to the therapist privately, it became a completely different situation. Excuse me for a minute. I'm going to mute this because you don't need to hear what's happening uh, within me. Although you did get to see it on the cameras. Look at you. Um, so I hope that answers the question. Look, if you need to send on more stuff, I can give you some more advice of my own experiences. But I hope that answers the question. I was asked a question at the Fusion Christmas party by Azura, my good friend, who trains with me. So she asked, if you could change the cast of a film, what film would you pick? So this I've been asked this a while ago now, and I was bouncing around in my head, and I was thinking it would be easy for me to say, and I'll give you a good example of this. The King of Comedy, the Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro film from '83. And I would just swap Joaquin Phoenix for Robert De Niro. But the problem with that is a lot of that performance is already in the Joker, with Joaquin Phoenix playing that role. He, was clearly inspired by it. So what I'm going to do is, and I would not want to see this film remade again. It was remade already in the 90s. I wouldn't want to see it again, but I thought this would be the most fun to do it. So I'm going to go for 12 Angry Men. Immediately swapping the title because we are in 2022. It wouldn't be 12 men on a jury, you would like to think. So I've decided to do a gargantuan task of swapping all of these people out for 12 people, 12 new people coming in. And I was thinking I wasn't going to put Joaquin Phoenix in this. I don't think it would suit Joaquin Phoenix, but as the Henry Fonda character, I'm not going to name out the jury numbers, by the way, and I'm not even going to swap who would swap for who. I'm just putting in 12 people who I would think would make a great film together. As the Henry Fonda character, I'm going to go for Kate Blanchett. Who could you not? How could you not pick the? I think the two living legends at the moment, screen wise, actor wise, Joaquin Phoenix, Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett as Harry Fonda's character. Okay, Bruce Dern has to go in there. Now he has to go in there because there is an elderly gentleman in 12 Angry Men who plays a very smart man who's seen as kind of doddery and by some of the other jurors, but he's very smart and he has a little bit of comedic chops in it too. So I'm going to go for Bruce Dern. I'm going to have his daughter Laura Dern in there as well because again, brilliant, very adaptable actor. So I'm going to have Laura Dern. I'm going to go for Beanie Feldstein. Um, Another great actor whose career, well, I guess their career started to take off a lot anyway. Comes out from under the shadow of the whole uh, Jonah Hill's sister situation. Um, that is Jonah Hill's real surname, Feldstein. Beanie Feldstein's in there. Paul Dano, again, fantastic actor, director now too. You might know him from There Will Be Blood. Probably will know him from The Riddler in the latest Batman film. I'm going to go for John David Washington, Denzel's son. That's bad to name him that. I'm just after saying Beanie Feldstein coming out from under the shadow of someone else. But John David Washington, um, Black Klansman, he was in that. He was in Tenet. Brilliant actor. Zazie Beetz, who I think is going to be one of the greats, coming through. She was in The Joker, actually. She played his imaginary girlfriend, really. Michelle Yeoh, Everything Everywhere. I'm going to always get this wrong. Everything, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's what it's called. She's been in loads of stuff, but is now finally getting her due and getting lots of awards recognition for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Michael Stuhlbarg. Michael Stuhlbarg, I saw him in A Serious Man back in like 2000, maybe nine, maybe after that. He's in Call Me by Your Name. You will know him when you see him. I think he was in Men in Black going back a long time ago. He could have been one of the sequels, actually. I'm not too sure. Michael Stuhlbarg, great actor. Barry Keoghan, to represent the Irish, play one of the younger jurors. Because it is a clash of generations in that film too. Guy Garcia Bernal, who I'd throw in a lot of films. He's in a lot of films, but I'd put him in many, many films, to be honest. He is an outstanding actor. Probably doesn't get his recognition as much as he should. And then I went for one more older gentleman. There's only one like really elderly man in the film, but I think it's all right to throw another one. And I'm going to have this man as juror one, the man who presides over the conversations, and his name is Harvey Keitel. I mean, come on. If you don't know who Harvey Keitel is, come on, a genius, and goes way back, and he's in a lot of Scorsese films, and he's brilliant in them all. Hope that answers your question, Azura. I hope you go in and watch 12 Angry Men if you haven't seen it, and if you have, and you don't know who these actors I've named, if you don't know some of them, go and Google them. They're all great. That's your 12. I don't want it remade, by the way. I'm just to answer the question in a fun way. Josh asked a really interesting question, and it's something that me and Josh have talked about before. And this can be in regards to jiu-jitsu, which it is when me and Josh are talking about, with regards to a lot of things that you like doing, but maybe you struggle with sometimes. And fitness falls into the category for a lot of people. Like, will I go for a run? Oh God, it'd be easier not to go for a run, that kind of thing. But Josh asked, what conversations do you have with your brain when you don't want to do something, but you decide you have to do it? Like jiu-jitsu being something, getting in the cold water, which myself and Josh have done. Something CrossFit. I think my brain will tell me, excuse me again for a minute. Sorry. I think my brain will tell me with jiu-jitsu, because it's a contact sport. If I'm feeling a little bit anxious that day, the last thing I want to do is be in contact with people. You have to have your bit of small talk, which doesn't happen as often anymore because we all know each other and it's not small talk anymore. But you have to have chats with people while you're warming up and all that. Especially if you're taking the class, if you're coaching the class, you have to do it. But I think my brain is very much sometimes makes up its own mind in the sense of the OCD thing, which I've spoken about a number of times, but it's very a big thing for me, obviously. But it will say you have to do this because this is what we do at this time on a Monday or this time on a Wednesday or whatever it might be. You have to do it. If we excuse that for a minute, the OCD thing, say if louder voices are screaming over the OCD thing and it's just saying, oh, I don't feel I'm going to get smashed today, or I don't feel I'm going to be good, or God, all the big guys are in and stuff like that. I think some of the conversations that I have myself aren't going to be as deep as what you have with yourself, Josh, or some other people. Mine are quite shallow. You either go in there and get smashed or you don't. Now Josh's situation is separate to mine. Josh is married, his kids, full-time job. So it's all jiu-jitsu is his kind of escape. And he would call it that himself. It's his escape and his way to get out there and, get his heart rate up, because he likes to wear that little monitor on his chest, which is really annoying because it digs into your head when he's on top of you. But I digress. But his conversation is going to be different to mine. Mine conversations, like I said, are quite shallow, and I get away from them easier probably than Josh does. I think Josh was probably go through what I go through with sometimes with anxiety, maybe, but more of, it is easier not to do things. But Josh has been doing, pushing himself since he was, I think he started, Josh, when you were 14, you said, like doing training and getting in shape and stuff like that. So I'd imagine your conversations have morphed over time too. Those things when you were 14 or 15. There's a lot more distractions, I guess, when you're, there's more distractions for you now, funnily enough. When I was a teenager, there was more distractions for me, so I wasn't training. But for you, with the kids, and I know you love spending time with them and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not the same thing for you. That conversations for me are quite different. And you also asked about the phrases that your brain will pop in. The questions or the phrases that your brain will kind of say to you about training. And for me, it's usually like this: are you hungry? Because sometimes that's a good enough reason not to do it. As you know, like most of the days when I'm in there, I'm staying around for kids' classes anyway. So I go and get something to eat and then go back to the gym. I don't go home and come back in. So mine is like, you could just go, especially in the winter, you could just go for a hot shower now and just go and get something to eat. And when Josh is coming in, I roll anyway. But sometimes when Josh isn't there, like, I'll stand at the counter waiting to see who comes in and then go, all right, I'll go. And this is not, if anybody's listening to it, this is not because of you that I'm not rolling. It's nothing to do with that. But just some days you're just looking for something. It's not even a phrase in your brain or a question. You're just looking for something to make you not want to do it. And sometimes it takes a big lad to come in, or someone who you don't have an answer for with jiu-jitsu, and you just kind of go, right, well, I'll leave it today. Now that doesn't happen that often, but like, you know yourself, if you're 50%, if you're 50-50 on the fence, and I'm not all, again, that's not often, but at 50-50, I only need one thing to sway me. But Josh, that my OCD is what's calling most of the time, and that's what gets me on the mats. And me and Josh are going to talk about this again. We talk about it a lot. So I hope that answers. I hope it answers for some people who maybe had these questions in their mind. You'll always feel better if you do it. Whatever it is, jiu-jitsu, getting in the ice water, CrossFit, going for a run, you'll always feel better if you do it. But don't beat yourself up if you don't do it, because some days you just don't want to do it. Like, and that's all right. The whole demented social media push of these guys who are like, you gotta do it, shouting at the camera, lifting weights while they're doing it. It's all blustering and nonsense. Just trust me, those lads are having their days off too, right? So just don't beat yourself up. My good friend Joanne, always, I knew she'd come through the question. She was the one who gave us our first deep dive episode. So, what are you most looking forward to in the new year? I think I'm kind of looking forward to continuing on this nutrition thing. I'm on a bit of a break. We finished yesterday the 12-week nutrition program that we were doing. I dropped 4.4 kilograms, even though that wasn't the plan, but I feel good with it. I don't want to lose any more. So I was chatting to Martin about this, and and again, fortunately, I have Josh on my side for this because he knows all about this nutrition stuff. And I wanted to put on, now listen, I don't want to bulk up at all, because cardio training and workouts, leaning towards cardio are my thing, and I much prefer them over weight training. Weight training I'm really starting to enjoy now, but I don't want to bulk up, but I'd like to put on a little bit of muscle, see the body change again. I'm really happy. I'm on a break now until the start of January, and we dig in again, and then we'll start. I'll go to Martin, I'll go to Josh, and decide on something else. I'm still going to eat the 3,400 calories a day because I'm feeling good with it. That's what I'm looking forward to. It's not a resolution I've started already. It's just something that I'm going to continue to do. I've got the skills, particularly with nutrition and what I can eat and feel good with. So the next step is putting on a little muscle and see how I feel with that. A little muscle, people. Don't come back and say the bulk thing. I'm not bulking. I have no interest in bulking. Okay. I'm slow enough on the mats without having to bulk and then oh god, that'd be dreadful. But I'm also Joanne, I'm also looking forward to this podcast as well. Meeting some people, maybe getting to travel to a bit more for a few more interviews, talking to some people. Hint, hint, Joanne, by the way, talking to some people I've had on before, and having them on again, and maybe chatting to them about other aspects of the work, but then maybe just about random stuff because I've really obviously honed in on people's what they do and with Joanne, obviously, as our therapist talked about that, talked a bit about art with Joanne, but I haven't really talked about other stuff outside of that. What I really like to get to know about people, and that could be a part of a project too. So that'd be really exciting thing to do. The Dancing Soul, I don't know who's in charge of the Dancing Souls social media, but I think I have a good idea. All right, I may have mentioned their name already in this podcast. That's all I'm saying. But the most challenging thing you have overcome this year, I think, always the challenge is the the lows. My mum will know better than most people, and a couple of other people who I will have talked to about the lows, Josh being one. They're always the most difficult to overcome because when you're in right smack in the middle of it, everything else has gone. All your achievements for the year, your progress and everything you're trying to do, what you're trying to do with the podcast, everything becomes meaningless and useless, and you're talentless. Nobody likes you. Shut your stupid mouth. All of that, like as harsh as it sounds, is exactly what comes in. Haven't had a significant low in a few months. They're always the most challenging things for me. Physically, the knee problem I was having, I found that very tough on my mental health as well as my physical health when I couldn't do a lot of things. Martin was very helpful to bring me in and be able to do some CrossFit work, but I couldn't do jiu-jitsu for bits and pieces. I wasn't comfortable on the mats. I couldn't move properly. Physically, that was it. But the funny thing is, every challenge has been helped by other people and me helping myself by telling other people about it and the lift that they give. It's always huge. And I'd have to say thanks to the people I've mentioned already, Joanne and Josh, but like Martin, everybody else. That's really important at the end of a year to recognize that without my mom, my dad, all that through the year, I couldn't have got through the year in the way I have and feeling good on Christmas Eve without everybody around me, and the contact, the connections we have, but the contact we have in the gym or even through messaging and in person and all those things. So yeah, thanks for that. That's how we get over the challenges we get over. Simon asked a question. Like I knew Simon was going to ask me questions about jiu-jitsu because Simon is in love with the sport, winning gold medals all the time. So Simon, I think my ring light just turned brighter by itself, even though let you in the secret, 7 a.m. in the morning, it keeps getting brighter. I mean, the ring light, not the day. The day is going to get brighter soon. Simon wanted to ask submission to catch for the rest of your BJJ career and why. I think we all know this, Simon. I think everybody who listens to me talk on the mats about it. The submission I love the most is the Darce choke. I just think it's slick. It looks cool. There's a technical aspect to it, not saying it, there's harder submissions to get, there's easier submissions to get too, but there's a technical aspect and a technical setup that I really like on the submission. Unfortunately, Simon, you also asked why. The reason why I picked that is because I can't get them anymore. People know I like it. When people know you like a submission, it becomes very hard to get it. Have I adapted and moved to something else? Probably not. Like I said to Rosa, I'm a white belt when it comes to attacks and jiu-jitsu. So Darce choke, the reason why I can't get them anymore. Submission, I'd like to be caught with and why. And this is actually a great question, Simon, because it got me thinking, right? I've probably been caught with every submission. The only person who's ever caught me with something like a Tarico Plata is Martin, right? So I was wondering, would I go with that? But then I thought, well, then it maybe just be Martin getting it. I thought that'd be terrible because he'd be annoying me. So I was running through my head, and it's become quite a badge of honor that I've been put to sleep 6 times, probably double, probably triple more than everybody else, um, and 6 times more than most people. I'm not thrilled by it, but it's happened. And my excuse is that I genuinely don't see the stars, so I think I'm all right, and then I just go out when I wake up. But Simon has put me out, right? And there's a few people who've put me out, but the people who've put me out in the same position, Keen, Simon, and Josh, that's what maybe Justin might have done the same thing. But it's been that collar choke. Uh, Most people got it from the collar choke from the back, but some have adapted from when I turned a turtle, and then they can adapt it in from that. So the collar choke that you got me with, Simon, I'm going to say, right? You remember it. You were when I woke up. You were quite worried, as Keen was when I woke up and he was standing over me. Especially when the first time you put someone out, it's actually worse when you put someone out because you have a terrified feeling. What if they never wake up? But the one that you caught me with, Simon, and the reason why, it's very peaceful. Trust me. If you haven't got out before, like, I'm not advising it, by the way. Tap if you think you're going to, if you see stars, tap before you get put out. But if you get put out that way, you'd be surprising how peaceful it is. So I hope that answers your question, Simon. Um, my mother sent me some kind of, I guess, well, not really. Well, actually, no. I'll answer Nicola's first, and then I'll answer my mum because she sent me a few questions. So Nicola asked me a question that's been asked before, and I told her I'd been asked before, but she wanted to change it, and I said, don't change it because it's a really good question that can adapt over time. You can, or you'll feel bad for the people you didn't put in. I think I put in like Hattie McDaniels, John Lennon, might have put Barack Obama in. So I had 4 anyway. I can't really remember. So I'm going to answer it. Well, I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways because I thought that might be a good way. Because I had John Lennon in the last one, it's only fair to have Paul McCartney in this one. So I'm going to have Paul McCartney. I'm going to have Paul Thomas Anderson, who's a director who's made most recently Licorice Pizza, but he's made like one of my favorite films, There Will Be Blood. He's made Phantom Thread, Boogie Nights, just film after film of absolute brilliance. Inherent Vice is another one. He's got a good friendship with Joaquin Phoenix. They made The Master together. That's another amazing film, which is about Scientology, but don't tell anyone. But Paul Thomas Anderson, Paul McCartney, these are all kind of arty kind of things, I suppose, like, in that field. I was kind of thinking of like who would you have as a fictional character, but I don't know if I'd have like a fictional character in there. Um, I was gonna have Bono, but I'll tell you what I'm gonna do with Bono. I'm gonna have him on my. I'm gonna be talking a bit about him on my next episode for a reason. There's a thread that I'm gonna go through on my next episode, episode 153, which I'll be recording maybe Stephen's Day, well in advance because I'll be going to Dublin for the holiday for a holiday for New Year's. But Paul Thomas Anderson, Paul McCartney. I think it'd be interesting to have someone like who's a really like someone like Norman Mailer, the author. If I haven't spoken about Norman Mailer before, Norman Mailer is a not a nice man. I think it's fair to say. He shot his wife in a like a parlor game, or it was by accident. Right, I say obviously, but not obviously, but it was an accident. He shot his wife. He attacked, or was he attacked with a hammer? It's on YouTube actually. If you want to look it up, Norman Mailer hammer. Who's he with? He's with another author, isn't he, or a filmmaker? I should really remember that. I've watched the video a few times. I think he gets attacked with the hammer. Um, he was on TV with Gore Vidal on some political. Not Gore Vidal. Excuse me. Yeah, no, sorry, with Gore Vidal, I wasn't political. It was the talk show with Dick Cavett's talk show, and he just is a nasty guy on it. Like Gore Vidal is a pain in the arse too, to be fair. But Norman Mailer's a bit nastier than. But to be fair to Norman Mailer, he has written some really, really great fiction, and I think he'd be, McCartney and Paul Thomas Anderson are quite, nice, kind of guess softly spoken people, and Norman Mailer like mix it up a bit. Do you know what I'm going to do? And Nicola, this is up to you to go and look this up, but I'm going to put Gore Vidal in there too, because you could talk about films with Paul Thomas Anderson, you could talk about music with Paul McCartney, you could talk about, all sorts of art with those two, but then you'd have Gore Vidal and Norman Mailer. You're trying to separate them. You need to have a bit of aggression and, that kind of thing at a party. So they're the four I'm going to go with. I'm also going to answer your question in a slightly different way. Who four nightmare guests? So straight away, Elon Musk, because he's a bit of a prick, to put it bluntly. A man who bought a company, really, like Twitter, whatever amount he paid for it. I think I said it on the last couple of episodes ago, but I might have got it wrong, the number. But an obscene amount of money, and it seems like he just bought it to free speech. You know what I mean? Now remember, I mean, free speech. He got like people like that clown Andrew Tate reinstated. You got Donald Trump reinstated. This caliber of people. So he seems to want to have on. But remember that when those young kids, the football team, got caught in the cave in Thailand. We all remember that, and they got saved. And there's been a documentary about it, and a feature film made about it by Ron Howard. When one of the guys who was going down to save the kids, Elon Musk said he could build some sort of a craft to go to get through there and save the kids, but he couldn't because the terrain, and the guy said that wouldn't work. We'll have to do it this way. And Elon Musk called him a pedophile. So there's your, the people that love Elon Musk. There's your free speech champion. Calling someone a pedophile is probably, if they're obviously not a pedophile, is probably one of the worst things you can call them. So I put Elon Musk in there. I wouldn't want to be at this dinner. I just thought it'd be a fun little game that we could have. I'm not gonna put like, well, I could actually put Norman Mailer back in, but I won't. He's had his dinner. He's full. Um, Donald Trump's kind of an easy target, isn't he? He's probably an easy target for a reason. I'll stick Donald Trump in there because these lads get on. Like, it's just you wouldn't want to be at this dinner party. Um, who do I dislike an awful lot? I put James Cameron in there. Seems a bit cruel, but he's not only made one Avatar, he's decided to follow it up with another one. And I just realized that Nicola, you went to see Avatar 2 with Martin and Keane, so apologies for that, but it's Avatar. So James Cameron goes in there. Very unfortunate on him, but he goes in there with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And who do I really dislike in music? Um, I don't really dislike anyone enough that I could say that they go in there. But do you know what? It's Christmas. Let's throw Louis Walsh in there as well. Get Louis in there. Yeah, I'm sure Louis is all right. That seems a bit harsh, but I'm going to put him in there. So there's two for you, Nicola. I hope you enjoyed it. Go look at Gore Vidal getting attacked by with a hammer, and also go look at him on the Dick Cavett show with Gore Vidal, and you'll see what a nasty person he is and how nobody likes him. My mom sent me a few questions. So my favorite quote has always been, strangely enough, I might have mentioned this before, but I heard it first in the amazing film White Men Can't Jump, Black Men Can't Jump, White Men Can't Jump. And it is by John Keats. It's true as anything, if you listen to a beautiful song, like I've been listening to Pyramid Song by Radiohead a lot recently because I have been listening to a Radiohead podcast called Idiot Talk, and they were going through kind of how it's written, how Pyramid Song is written in different time signatures, and the time signature is written in such that if you wrote them on a piece of paper, it would actually look like a pyramid. And the The lyrics are quite to do with I think it's the Book of the Dead as well, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So it all ties in beautifully. It's a beautiful song. So Think of Beauty is Joy Forever. If you listen to that song and you find it beautiful, it's never going to not be beautiful. It's just one of those things. It's like looking at a piece of art. For me, I've mentioned it so many times, but The Scream uh, by Edvard Munch is a thing of beauty for me. Looking at pictures of my, or looking, what I say, looking at my pictures, looking at pictures of my nieces and nephews, or looking at my nieces and nephews, I should say. They'll always be beautiful in my eyes, and those things like that, like those films, or you can go with art in general, music, whatever falls in the art category as something that proves that quote. But you can, people and how people are, and gestures that people have made to you and the gestures you make to other people. Um, you know, Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever. That's my one. Um, Describe yourself in one word. At least it would obviously change every year. I'm going to be kind to myself this year. Last year I might have said something mean about myself, but I'm not going to this year, and I'm going to say resilient. I'm just going to leave it there with that word. Um, Living role models. Like, I'm not going to say my parents, because they are, and my grandfather in particular. You know, as he has been in my life, always been there, and he's a role model. But I will say it's a funny one, isn't it? I think, like, because we always think that role models, you have to look upwards in age, people that someone that we've admired for a number of years, and they're 10, 20 years older, is because we look at their path, I think, and what they have done and what they have achieved, and maybe this is what we want to do as we get older. We want to follow that path, and they're the reason for role models. But like, for me, someone like a role model for me was someone like Josh. And I spoke to Josh about this recently. Josh got his purple belt in jiu-jitsu a couple of weeks ago. And it was a big night. A lot of people got their belts. Keen, my other dear friend in there, got his purple belt as well. And obviously the coach, Martin, got his brown belt, but I'm very close with Josh, obviously, and he got his purple belt. And I said to him that night, uh, for Josh to get his purple belt in the space of time he's got it is one thing, but whilst only being able to go in there once a week, like I'm in there 3 times a week doing jiu-jitsu, some other people are there more. He's only able to go in once a week and give that hour. He's not able to go to the classes where he's being taught. He has to go to the Friday class, which is rolling. So it's not, Martin doesn't teach us anything in that class. We literally get in, stuck in, and hopefully use the techniques we've been shown. So he's only been able to go to that one class, and he's still been able to be a great husband and be a great father to his 2 beautiful kids. And that to me is a role model, So Josh should be a role model to me, in how he looks after stuff, how he's very open about his struggles. Asking me the question I answered earlier on about that. That's what goes through Josh's brain all the time. Like, he's asking me the question, but that me and Josh have spoken so often about that. We both have the same feelings when it comes to those things, Cold War, Jiu-Jitsu, all that. So someone like Josh is a role model, but he's like a good bit younger than me. Like, I probably act younger than him because there's a guy, childish stuff sometimes. But like, I think Josh is 31. So he's 9 years younger than me. But for me, Josh should be a role model, and with all the stuff he does, and I think there's like a number of people, and I'm very fortunate at the moment to have all these people in my life that I see as role models, that I see, like Joanne, like, Joanne's a great someone who I talk about, because I talk to Joanne every so often through text, and especially now the last few weeks, because I've been asking for interaction with guests and our former guests and people, and Joanne has been great for sending stuff on. But I see Joanne's work on Instagram and stuff, what she puts up about how she's helping people through art therapy, which she does. And go back and listen to Joanna Dwyer's episode. Of course, go back and listen to that. But the stuff that she puts into it with the kids that she's helping, with how she does things, how she looks at how some kids, and I'm not going to use, it's probably wrong to use the word different, that's the wrong expression. I don't even have the right expression I'm using, but well, I guess we're all different. But when kids are faced with challenges that I haven't been faced with, and maybe the people listening here haven't been faced with, kids with behavioral problems or autism, um, ADHD, all those kind of things that can come up with children, and they don't know they don't have an outlet for it. And then they have someone like Joanne there who can, sit them down, talk to them, use art to express themselves. Someone like Joanne is a role model. I could be here all day, to be honest, listing role models, but Joanne and Josh, I'm going to put you two there. And I just want other people to know who I've spoken to and who I do interact with. Everybody's like can be a role model, you know, because like I look up to a lot of people, and I try to kind of. I was told I was a really good coach yesterday, and that I was nearly gone, folks. I was nearly gone. So thank you to the person who said that, by the way. It's very kind of you. Whether you just said it for Christmas or not, no. To be honest, it was very genuine, and it was very. It touched me, and I'm glad that I am being able to help people in that way. Couple more questions before I go. Again, for my mom, question you wish someone asked. Well, this is always going to be such easy one for me. It's like, ask me anything about films. Ask me my top 10 films. Ask me my top 10 albums, my top 10 songs, anything to do with art, my favorite books, because they're easy episodes for me. I would bleed on. Like, I'll do a top 10 song episode, no problem, and deep dive in each one of those songs, deep dive in films, because listener, that I have those lists always within my reach. Literally, I have, and this isn't a joke, and I don't know why I put it on my phone. I may have been using for the podcast at some point, and I just typed it in my phone because it was easiest. But in my notes section on the phone, I have my 10 best films written down. But I guarantee you that one of those has been replaced by something else, because sometimes they change, not often. The same goes for songs. Songs less so, because I don't hear newer songs as often as I should. But I'm always watching films, and particularly going back and watching older films, they creep in. These newer songs creep in, or these newer films creep in, or older films creep in, and they can be replaced. But I could do full episodes. The last one, Billboard. What would you have on it? If you had one billboard, what would you have on it? To be honest, as lame as it sounds, it would be obviously to do with mental health. Well, that actually doesn't sound lame. That's a nice thing, but is a mental health podcast. I'd obviously have something to do with mental health. And I didn't want, I was trying to think of something that wasn't banal, something that wasn't just said, smile, because people say that and it's like, what? And going through hell and you tell me to smile. I really like the sentiment of be kind. And I think I've seen those be kind messages with a full stop at the end. Sometimes you see messages where it's, if you saw be kind without a full stop, for some reason that doesn't, the full stop, putting the emphasis on it, the punctuation on it, it strikes me more. I don't know if anybody else, there's probably people out there who are very into words, would probably say the same thing, that it does mean something to them, but that full stop means a lot to me, because, be kind full stop is as blunt and as nice as you can put it at the same time. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put up, who are your role models? That's what I'm going to put up, because when I was trying to think of who my role models were, I was always thinking in a positive sense, thinking positively about other people and the impact they have made. So I think if you saw that on a billboard, it immediately turns you into that your mind into that idea of being positive and trying to figure out the people in your life who have helped you through and have been a role model to you. So I hope, dear mother, I hope that has answered your question. Everybody, all of you sent the questions in. I can't thank you enough. I hope I answered them all well. Um, I want more interaction with people on this podcast and with listeners and stuff, and I have been getting it. And it makes it so much easier. Trust me, like these episodes are very, very easy for me, but really, really enjoyable to do. All the questions are positive as well, so I'm not led down a road of having to think of tougher things, in my life. So thank you for that. I hope I hope you had a lovely, lovely Christmas. We're in those days of trying to figure out what we're going to do between Christmas and New Year. But honestly, I hope you all have the most beautiful 2023. Keep in touch. Keep commenting on the podcast. If you are on YouTube now and you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. It always helps. John Francis, a happy new year to you. Thank you for all your tech support. As always, couldn't do it without you, quite literally. I didn't write this down on my notepad. I should know this by now. Thanks to my mom, my dad, granddad, Jaron Calvin. As always, it's been another great year. Happy New Year to all of you. Subscribe to YouTube, like I said. Also subscribe to our Instagram page, our Facebook page, our Twitter page. We're on Spotify, Apple Anchor, Google Podcasts. If you want to give a review on those, by the way, do, especially on the Apple one. For some reason, it does help. Leave a comment on there as well, or, click like under our YouTube video. All those kind of little interactions that aren't technically interactions with me, but help the podcast along the way. You've been great all year. Thank you so much for supporting us. We're in awe of you, and I'm overdoing it, am I? No, thank you so much. Listen, I'm off to get my Christmas sorted and enjoy myself. But I know even this comes out on the 28th. Happy New Year, everyone. Take care. Chat to you next week. It'll be another solo one because I had a half an episode written out, by the way. Like I said about Bono and stuff, and not about Bono, but Bono's part of it. I had half an episode written out and then I changed it because the questions started coming in. That was my emergency episode. So next week I'll have a solo and then probably back to the guests. But thank you very much. Take care. All the best. Bye.